banter. Some people call me the Batman, others call me the Chief Sensei. So I'm just going to be getting straight into this module introduction. So welcome to public speaking adjudication if you're a first timer. And this is known as public speaking adjudication training. Okay, someone says they cannot hear anything from there. Could someone just kindly react with emojis if I am clearly heard, just so I know I'm not making a blunder or a mistake? Okay. Am I audible, ladies and gentlemen? If I'm audible, someone kindly unmute and notify me if I am audible.
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Hashim Otahunga Abdul Majid Wangusa. All right, thank you, Susan. Nice. Let me proceed with that. I think the person who cannot hear me will have to sort themselves out. Okay. So as an adjudicator, you play a very crucial role in public speaking competitions. The other word for adjudicator is known as judge. So you are more of a judge that listens to public speakers or to people who are presenting a speech before you, and you are to evaluate or give an assessment of this speech. So your feedback and evaluations are what helps shape the skills and development of different speakers. So this entire module that I'm going to go through explores the key responsibilities and the roles of judges, stroke adjudicators, and it is able to provide you with a solid foundation for effective adjudication. So one of the very first things you need to know is who is a good adjudicator and who is a bad adjudicator. So first and foremost, if you are to forget anything that I am to tell you today, you need to know that a good adjudicator is one who is a good communicator. So if you are not going to be a good communicator, or if you don't have any single prospect or intention of becoming a good communicator, then this particular course is not something for you. So if you are not a good communicator as of now, you can improve on that and become a good communicator. But the very first aspect or quality of a good adjudicator is that in order for you to be able to excel, you must have certain qualities, and these include you must be an impartial person. So which means that when you are judging anyone, you use your objective lens. You don't say you feel emotional. You know, there's a time I was adjudicating with one of the people, I think it was David, in a certain competition, and there's a speaker who came, they gave a speech, and it was a dramatic speech. It was not one that was in line with what the task required. So after they were done giving the speech and we're doing our deliberations as judges, normally what happens is that after a speaker has finished giving a speech, they go away, and then judges talk, they deliberate, and they ask themselves, what mark can we give to this speaker? So the rest of us were giving the speaker marks that were below 65, and one of the judges gave a mark of like 80. So we said, hey, okay, you have given 80. Kindly tell us or justify why have you given this 80? Maybe somewhere, somehow, there is something we didn't notice. And if you know what she told us, she simply said, I loved that girl's speech. I felt like that speech was the speech for me. I really loved it. So the question was, what about that speech made you give it an 80? And the answer was, I loved that speech. It made me feel good. So one of the very first qualities of a good adjudicator is that you need to have an ability to evaluate speeches objectively. So you don't evaluate them based on your feelings and emotions. The other skill you want to learn is the skill of active listening and time management. You know, one of the very most ashaming things that will happen to you as an adjudicator is if Paragon Utorica is having one of its other sessions and you have been chosen to adjudicate, let's say in Eastern Uganda or Northern Uganda or even Western Uganda, and then you show up late, yet people are already within the rooms. One thing you need to learn, and as I go on to teach you on what public speaking adjudication is from scratch and how a tournament happens, you're going to be able to see that time management is one of the most important skills that you need to have. So part of the interactive elements we shall have in this particular module is that to enhance your learning experience, we shall have elements such as quizzes or case studies. And these activities will allow you to apply your knowledge in practical scenarios so that you can be able to reinforce your understanding of the material and make the learning process engaging and enjoyable. So one of the interacting elements that we're going to provide for you is that after this particular module, we're going to have a quiz and a test that is set, that is just asking simple questions that I've been able to cover, but in that we're trying to evaluate how good have you been able to understand this. And you should take these tests very importantly, because at a point in time that you fail to attend these particular tests, it's going to be really bad for your whole overall evaluation and certification. So for those that have just joined us, I have just started. I am within the introduction of what it is to become a public speaking adjudicator. And I would also love to communicate that if you did not fill in the baseline surveys or the surveys that you're supposed to fill in before this, please kindly fill them in. They have been reshared by Joseph on our different platforms. For me or for any of the facilitators to be able to mark your tests or to be able to evaluate how good you are at covering this whole course, we shall need you to have filled in that baseline as a must. If you don't fill in that baseline, you are not going to be able to be evaluated. And that baseline is, it only takes you 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes to be able to fill it in. Please let us do that well. And I will also announce that at least right now, 9 of the participants have been able or have been removed from the program because they did not do re-registration. And we are very serious at Debate Institute Africa to make sure that this program is well streamlined and effective, and we shall end up cutting people as the course goes on due to failure to comply with certain aspects that make this course comfortable and make you to be certified in the right ways possible. Okay, then the other thing is on roll call. You need not write your name down in the chat space or anywhere for roll call. This particular Google Meet utilizes an AI tool that automatically counts how much time you have spent in the meeting. So if you have been in the meeting for, let's say, 20 minutes and you have someone call you, you get out and then you come back in, it will resume your timing. So you don't want to have the least amount of time. For example, someone yesterday only had 7 minutes in orientation. I was almost removing them off the program when I inboxed them to inquire why it was 7 minutes. They gave me a plausible answer. But every single session that we attend is timed by this tool, and this tool saves it in form of an Excel sheet. And there are very many Excel sheets that are combined for the different sessions. And overall, one of the policies we have is the attendance policy. We shall evaluate whether you spent 80% of the time attending these particular courses. So furthermore, this module is intended or designed to help you improve your adjudication skills and approaches by showing you the qualities of good adjudication and staying informed about the different trends that you can embrace in public speaking adjudication. So first and foremost, let us now start. The banter aside, now we are doing serious business. What is public speaking? Public speaking is simply the act of delivering a speech or presentation to a live audience. It is a skill that you are going to be able to evaluate, and it is valuable enough that it allows individuals to communicate ideas and inspire others. Now, apart from that, you need to know that public speaking takes different forms. Some of those are presentations, debates, lectures, and it can be used in a variety of different settings. So after knowing what public speaking is, the art of giving a speech, we need to know and understand what is adjudication in the context of public speaking. So in simple terms, adjudication refers to the process of evaluating and judging speeches or presentations. It is as simple as saying, Harold, I loved your presentation. I believe it was good. And someone else saying, I did not love your presentation. You were stammering for most of the times and you were getting stuck. So I did not love your presentation. So as long as you are able to give a fair comment or an assessment or an evaluation, then you are already adjudicating a speech. Like I already told you, adjudicators are also known as judges. And that is what you are all going to be for different competitions after you have been certified in this course. And you, the judges, are the ones that are responsible for assessing the quality of speeches. You're the ones that can say, I think speaker A does not do better than speaker B because of reasons A, B, C, and D. So throughout this entire course, you are going to be able to learn how to evaluate different speeches, what are the different types of speeches, etc., etc. My role is just to introduce you to the world of public speaking adjudication. So an adjudicator is an individual that has been trained to evaluate and judge speeches or presentations. And adjudicators are typically experienced public speakers. Sometimes they are experienced speech coaches who have a good understanding of the principles of effective communication. So which means that in this particular room, some of us have been public speakers before. Some of us have never been public speakers, but you want to learn how to judge a speech. And trust me, for you to be a good public speaking adjudicator, it is not a must that you must have participated in an inter-house public speaking competition. You must have participated in inter-colors competition in your primary school of public speaking. No. The whole idea is that for you to become an adjudicator, if you can read on the screen, is that you are an individual who is trained. That is why you are having this particular training. So adjudicators are people who are supposed to be impartial and objective in their evaluations. So we do not judge speeches according to feelings. Oh my God, I loved the way she smiled at me when giving that speech. Have a 90 plus. No, no, and no. That is not how we evaluate speeches. Okay. Now, the very first thing you want to learn, apart from the key terms of an adjudicator, who in simple terms is a judge that trains or evaluates speeches, is who is a chief adjudicator. So for every single tournament you're going to do, be it Paragon Rhetorica, be it National Debate Council, be it National Debate Council, be it Paragon Rhetorica, I'm trying to mention quality tournaments that are very well known. So if it's not NDC, it's not Paragon Rhetorica, it could be PAUDC or EAUDC, or within different high school competitions within Uganda that you may participate in. Even if it is Mashariki Debate Open or the online tournaments, there is someone that leads all adjudicators, and this is known as a chief adjudicator. So a chief adjudicator is a senior adjudicator who oversees the entire adjudication process in a public speaking competition. This person, known as a chief adjudicator, is one who makes sure that the competition runs smoothly and that the adjudicators are properly trained, briefed, and made fit for that tournament. And the competition rules are followed. So the chief adjudicator may, at his own disposal, adjudicate some speeches and provide feedback to speakers, but their main role is to manage the whole adjudication process. So for some of us that did Central Region Paragon Rhetorica, where I was a chief adjudicator, for many of the rounds, I did not even judge. I was just supervising, making sure adjudication runs smoothly, making sure that the adjudicators are trained, that they are briefed, that the speakers, when they bring complaints about some of the judges, I can be able to hear them. So the role of a chief adjudicator is to oversee the whole process. So no matter what competition you will do, there will always be a chief adjudicator that if you are a mere adjudicator, you are answerable to. Now, apart from the chief adjudicator, there's someone known as DCA, or the deputy chief adjudicator. The deputy chief adjudicator simply assists the adjudicator, the chief adjudicator, in supervising the whole adjudication process. So ladies and gentlemen, the kind of role that you play at a tournament is one of the most important, in that if adjudication is bad, participants start to complain, patrons start to complain, and people start to boycott the whole competition. So which means that you need to listen to the chief adjudicator. And it's the same chief adjudicator that does allocations of rooms. It's the same adjudicator that says, Abigaba Witness, Naloga Bridget, Kawagambe Morris, go to room 4 or go to room 5. And if you're in room 5, you're going to be with this particular person. So that is what a chief adjudicator is. Now, apart from the chief adjudicator, there is adjudicators that are responsible for adjudicating not only the final rounds of a competition, but also for overseeing the whole process. So most of the time, CAP is made up of the chief adjudicator, the deputy chief adjudicator, and the chief adjudication panel, and they play a variety of roles. For some competitions that you will do, you will find out that the core adjudication panel that I have highlighted is one that is responsible for setting tasks. They're the ones that are responsible for knowing what tasks are going to be done by the speakers. So they have been well-trained and experienced adjudicators that are not only able to assess a speech, but they are able to set tasks that people will answer to. So for those that don't know what tasks are, hang in there, I will be able to tell you all about it. So the CAP or the CAP plays a crucial role in determining the winners of the competition and ensuring that the highest standards of adjudication are maintained. So for the newcomers to public speaking adjudication, it is important for you to familiarize yourselves with the rules and guidelines of the competition. And we shall have a different facilitator who will be able to take us through all that. Mind you, we are preparing you not only to become good adjudicators or certified adjudicators, but to also be able to judge the next Paragon Rhetorica, subsequent regionals, and nationals. So speeches in and of themselves are timed using a stopwatch or timer. So after knowing what an adjudicator is and what a chief adjudicator is, the next thing you're going to look at is what are speeches. And speeches are what the speakers said to you that you have to judge and mark. Remember, we are going to have tasks, just like debate has motions. Motions that say, this house believes that Museveni should be the next president of the United States of Africa. Now, in public speech, what we have is a task that can look like present a 5-minute speech as the newly elected president of the United States of Africa on what your manifesto is and what your plans are. Okay, I hope Evans is paying attention, and I don't know, Obua, could you kindly unmute? Someone is really muted right now. Please kindly unmute. Interesting. Now I need to start doing. Obulejo, kindly unmute. Okay, that was really very interesting. I did not know that you can actually block someone off a call. Okay, goodbye to Obulejo. Let us go back to what we're doing. Okay, so speeches are typically timed using a stopwatch or a timer. So one thing that, let me just a moment. Okay, as I was saying, that what is a speech? A speech is what they present to you. And every single speech is timed using a timer or a stopwatch with specific time limits set for each speech. So if the task is saying, present a 5-minute speech as the new president of the United States of Africa, what you do is that within 5 minutes, the adjudicators time those speeches. So the timing of a speech is very important as it ensures that each speaker has a fair amount of time to deliver their message and that the competition also runs smoothly. This is why I told you that timekeeping is important. It's important for an adjudicator to reach the venue before the participants, and it is important for them to be able to have timely rounds because, okay, I also hope Hashim is paying attention right now. Okay, so let us proceed with this particular training. All right. So the timing is very important in that it helps the tournament schedule to run smoothly and for it to be able to show up on time. So the next question we could have is that what does a public speech tournament or tourney look like, and how does adjudication happen? So I'm just going to be looking at the whole competition format on how that whole competition in and of itself looks like. So first and foremost is that you need to understand the competition outlook or blueprint And this understanding is very crucial, especially for first-time adjudicators. You don't want to reach a competition and you are lost on what you have to do. So this particular sort of blueprint provides a visual image structured, how speeches will be evaluated, and how winners are determined. So here is an overview of what a typical competition looks like. So first and foremost, what is the competition format? You need to know, just like how football is. For example, if it is a cup, there are the preliminary rounds and then the knockout rounds, also known as the out rounds. The same thing happens in public speech. So at the beginning of a tournament, we can have up to 50 public speakers or more than that. For example, depending on how big the competition is, you can even have up to 300 public speakers. They have all come to compete to win. So what happens is that the whole competition is going to happen in two stages mainly. The very first stage is going to be the preliminary round. So that the very first rounds you see, we do round 1, we do round 2, we do round 3, we do round 4, we do round 5. Now, after those preliminary rounds happen, you will have some of them advancing to the out rounds, and some of them advancing to the out rounds, also known as the knockout rounds. So then what is the difference between preliminary rounds and the out rounds? Now, in the preliminary rounds, just as you hear the word preliminary, they are the first rounds. Each speaker delivers their speech independently. So one thing you need to understand is that if you have, for example, 30 speakers to participate in a tournament, the rule normally is, according to practice and to culture of public speech, is that we normally have half of them proceed to the out rounds, whereas half of them are dropped within the preliminary rounds. So imagine we have a competition. It is called Paragon Rhetorica. No, it is called, let me get a good name. It is called No. That will be very bad. Let me just proceed with the name. Let's say it is called the RRM Public Speech Training. It's public speech competition. So in the RRM Public Speech Competition, only 30 speakers register. So out of these 30 speakers that register for a physical round, even if it's an online tournament, half of them are the ones that normally would advance to the out rounds, whereas half of them are dropped. So the very first rounds, every single speaker participates in them. For example, let us say for our RRM competition, we are only going to have 5 preliminary rounds. And after we are done with the 5 rounds, we shall have people break straight to finals. So you make speakers go through round 1, they do round 2, they do round 3, they do round 4, and they do round 5. So for all these rounds, the CAP team, like I've been able to describe to you, the core adjudication panel, is working tirelessly, allocating judges, telling the speakers what particular tasks are they going to do for particular rounds. And after a round, the judges give personal feedback back to the speakers on how they can improve. So when all those first quarter rounds of the preliminaries are done, we have half of the speakers. Now remember, I've given you 30 speakers. What that means is that only 15 of those 30 will advance to the out rounds. Now, that is what we call breaks. So we announce breaks. The chief adjudicator will announce breaks and will say, we are going to read the top 15 people that have been able to do so well, that are going to be able to advance. Just like you see football in the World Cup, you have the preliminary stages, and then you have those ones that go to semis, to quarters, and then to finals. Now, once they are done with the preliminary rounds, they will go to the knockout rounds. Now, the catch is simple, ladies and gentlemen. It is not only public speakers that break to the out rounds, even adjudicators also break, which means that if you have been allocated in the first rounds and you're not doing a good job, the chief adjudicator will say that, hey, Timothy, you have not been judging well. Please sit out. You're not going to be able to judge the quarters, the semis, and the finals. This is important for 2 reasons. First and foremost, it is not because the chief adjudicator hates you so much. The thing is that the judges that have to go and judge the out rounds, that is the quarterfinals, the semis, and the finals, are judges that are good, because the speeches they're going to judge are good speakers that have also proceeded to break to the out rounds. But secondly, most complaints in a tournament will come from quarters, semis, and finals. So CAP wants to make sure that the very best judge the very best. Now, one more thing you need to know about the preliminary rounds is that these rounds, when you are judging those speeches, like Bakari Eli will come and tell you in his session, is that these rounds you judge each speech independently of the other. Whereas in the out rounds, we compare speeches. So the goal of the preliminary rounds is to select the top speakers that will advance to the knockout rounds. Now, what are the knockout rounds? In the knockout rounds, speakers are directly compared to one another. And adjudicators or judges here, they assess speeches in relation to each other, determining which speakers are the most effective and those that will advance to the next rounds. Now, let's say the example I gave to you of a competition that has 30 public speakers. Let us say 15 are the ones that break. Now, some tournaments, they will tell you that 15 of those ones will go to semi-finals. And out of semi-finals, half of those ones are the ones who go to finals. So half of 15 is more or less 7. So you'll have 7 finalists. But if CAP wants, they can have 15 people go through quarters, and then they break off 5. Then 10 go through semis, and then they break off 5, and then they have 5 finalists. That is how the tournament runs. Like I told you, the tournament is separated into different stages. This is for the beginners, right? It is separated into the preliminary rounds and the knockout rounds. The preliminary rounds are the very first rounds, round 1, round 2, round 3, and here all judges can judge and all participants can participate. But after those rounds are done, we use those rounds to be able to determine the speakers who are so good that can be able to advance to the out rounds. But in the same vein, adjudicators too must break to the out rounds. That is why if some of you have seen adjudicators presenting their CVs on posters that are posted online, you will see them saying finalist adjudicator of NDC 2023. So if you are why do you think they put finalists? They're trying to show that they were good enough that they were chosen to judge until the finals. So not many of us, based on our experience, will be able to judge a competition from the beginning up to the finals. For you to be able to judge from the beginning to the finals, you need to be a good, excellent adjudicator. And finals are normally judged by CAP itself, the chief adjudicator, the deputy chief adjudicator, and the other adjudicators that have shown prowess in doing well. Now, apart from the preliminary rounds, the knockout rounds, the other types of rounds are the silent rounds. And in these silent rounds, they are unique because for these rounds, there is no feedback that is given to the speakers. Remember, like I told you, ladies and gentlemen, every round, speakers are given feedback. And this is why you need to take this training seriously. Because you may be picked one day to judge a tournament, and the speaker finishes to talk. Trust me, judging public speech is not a matter of just keeping quiet. The thing is, after a speaker has finished to give their speech, you are supposed to tell them how they did. So you don't tell them their marks, but you tell them how good was their speech, what did they miss out, and what can they improve. And mind you, there are some speakers that have also spoken in different tournaments. So if you lie to them of what they did not do, they will go report you to CAP or to OCOM, and a serious chief adjudicator will make you sit out. That is not good for your CV. So you want to make sure you are competent. But silent rounds are the rounds whereby after you are done, as speakers finish to give their speech, they walk away. You don't give them any personal feedback or general feedback. In fact, it is more like what you guys say. What happens in Vegas stops in Vegas. Now, that is how silent rounds are taken in. These rounds are an important component of the preliminaries in public speaking, as they emphasize the evaluation process. They ensure equal treatment of all speakers and provide experience for both speakers and adjudicators. Now, the other thing I was to look at is the competition blueprint. And this blueprint outlines the number of rounds, the criteria for advancing to the next round, and any special rules or considerations for each round. And I've been able to provide to you that competition blueprint simply. So a model blueprint, a competition may consist of up to 5. For example, this is like a model print I put in the manual. If you look at the notes that were sent unto you, I said that a competition consists of 5 rounds, which with the top half of the speakers advancing to the knockout rounds. So the knockout rounds may include quarterfinals, things like semifinals, and the final round, with the winner determined based on their performance in the finals. Now, the other thing I want to look at is just a little bit to emphasize or to re-emphasize is adjudicator breaks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, even if you are in the advanced category, for any adjudicator to be able to break to the next round or to be able to break to the finals, and mind you, we have some adjudicators here. For example, we have Evans Bashagire, and I think Onyet Churchill is also here. I don't know if Finian is on the call. Whether or not they're on the call, I'll check within the roll call list after here. And yes, I'll remind all of you that there's a special tool that is able to determine how many minutes you have spent on the call in total. So even if you come on the call and leave and come back and leave, it is not going to be a trick to work for you to simply show that I showed up and later on left. The timer will keep on timing how much time you spend on the call. All right. So we have some adjudicators here like Evans Bashagire. I think Onyet Churchill is also here. These adjudicators judged at the previous Central Region Paragon Rhetorica, and they were able to win medals for best adjudicators. So at the Central Region Debate Institute Africa for Paragon Rhetorica was able to award the best overall judge, the second best judge, and the third best judge. So why do we judge, or how are we able to assess which judge does better and which judge can continue to judge onwards? So in public speaking competitions, adjudicators who perform well in the preliminary rounds are the ones who may be selected to judge in the out rounds or in the later rounds, including the finals. This process is known as adjudicator breaks, and these breaks are based on the feedback and assessment of both fellow adjudicators and the speakers themselves. So this is what is going to happen. What is going to happen is that when you are judging a round, the CA normally tells all adjudicators to give feedback on each other. For example, let's say I was judging in a round together with Wangusa and maybe with witness Abigaba. And maybe I don't do a good job. Wangusa and witness Abigaba can give feedback on me or can fill in a feedback form on me and give it to the chief adjudicator. The chief adjudicator will assess you based on this. And sometimes even the chief adjudicator will be around in a room and they will watch a speech and they will be able, based on their experience, even if they're not writing down, to assess that speech, and they will wait on the feedback you will give on to the speaker, and they will be able to see that you are playing or you are serious. If not, they will mark the speaker's name, and the chief adjudicator will be able to give a mark within their range. And if the mark you give is way lesser and way higher than that of the chief adjudicator, then you will not break. And what breaking is, you'll not be able to judge the out rounds. That is the quarters, semis, and finals. So the selection process that we have is that adjudicator breaks are typically determined by a combination of many factors. One of them is the quality of feedback you provided by your fellow adjudicators and that you provide to the speakers, your consistency in applying the right evaluation measures or criteria, and then your overall professionalism and conduct during the competition. Now, the other thing that we look at is the feedback from fellow adjudicators. And the fellow adjudicators can assess your performance. They provide feedback on the quality and depth of your evaluation and your ability to communicate effectively with speakers. Now, if we have some adjudicators that have a habit that when a speaker is giving their speech, they normally get their phone and they start to WhatsApp and they start to sim and they start to violate people on status and they do all sorts of things. They start to post memes. When you do this, your fellow adjudicators will give feedback on you. But even though you are a lone chair, for example, a lone chair are good adjudicators who are selected to be the only ones in a room because they are good enough, the speakers too will give feedback on you and it will not be good. More on this will be talked about by Gracious Faith when she's talking about professionalism by adjudicators. The other thing is feedback from speakers. I've talked about that. And the impact on adjudication. So adjudicators who are selected for adjudicator breaks are entrusted with judging in the later rounds of the competition, include the finals. So their selection is based on their ability to provide good and insightful constructive feedback, their fairness and impartiality. Now we're about to conclude this, but I'm just going to go a little bit on what are tasks, because you keep on hearing, I've been talking about tasks, public speech tasks. So in public speaking competitions, tasks are questions or topics on which speakers are required to present a speech. And tasks are designed to challenge speakers to think critically and to express their ideas clearly and engage with important issues. So as an adjudicator, it is a must, if not important, for you to understand the nature of the task and how they should be approached and interpreted. Bare minimum, you are like an examiner marking an examination. If you yourself did not understand the task, then you are in problem. So a task can also be defined as a question or a topic that serves as the basis for which a speech is given. Tasks are typically designed to be open-ended, allowing speakers to interpret them in different ways and present their own unique perspective. I want to give you an example of a task. The task is saying, record a 3-minute speech on the solutions to gender-based violence. For example, you are judging a speaker, and one of the tasks is record a 3-minute speech on the solutions to gender-based violence. Now, the task approach is quite simple. As an adjudicator, it is important for you to consider the task from the perspective of the speaker. This includes understanding the requirements of the task. What does the task want you to say? What sort of speech will you give for such a task? What is the time limit for this task? For example, the task above is saying, record a 3-minute speech. What is the time limit of that task? And what is the special focus of that speech? Adjudicators should also consider the sort of audience and the context in which the speech is being delivered. So I'm just going to talk about a little bit about task interpretation, but my other facilitators will be able to cover more on this. So what is task interpretation? Task interpretation refers to how the speaker themselves understand and respond to the task. So as an adjudicator, it is crucial for you to be able to assess the speaker's interpretation of the task. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not been paying attention, you want to pay attention on task interpretation. So it is very important for you to assess the speaker's evaluation or interpretation of the task and how well they address the topic or question. This includes evaluating the speaker's ability to stay on track. Some speakers, instead of talking about gender-based violence, they start to talk about maybe climate-based violence or climate change, something like that. I don't understand them sometimes also. The other thing is that every single task is interpreted on a word-per-word basis. So every single adjudicator should interpret the task following word per word. The meaning of every single word, or the meaning that they should consider each one in the task and how it contributes to its overall meaning. This is what helps to ensure that the speaker's response is relevant and focused on the requirements. Let me go back to our model task. Record a 3-minute speech on the solution to gender-based violence. The very first wording is record. I'll just highlight that a little bit if you can look at your screen. Record a 3-minute speech. So if the speech is a 3-minute speech, which means that when you sit down as an adjudicator, you are going to time the speaker's speech within 3 minutes, which means they only have to use 3 minutes. And the speech is on the solutions to gender-based violence. Solutions, one key important word here is solutions. So if a speaker comes and they only describe how gender-based violence is bad, they describe a story of how bad it was, of how it made them lose their leg and has made them lose their voice, and now they are inhuman because of gender-based violence, and they don't give solutions, what is going to happen is that they are going to lose that speech. But even you as an adjudicator, if you cannot see the word solutions there, and then you just give that speech because it made you feel good. You loved her speech, her story of gender-based violence, but she did not give the solutions. You will also not break. The other wording is to gender-based violence, so the speech is confined to that. Let us look at the very last thing we have to cover today, and after here we can go into a quick session and some bit of clarity where people feel they have not understood, or any single question on what a public speech tournament is, how does that competition happen, and how is everything else assessed. The other thing is audience identification. In public speaking adjudication, audience identification is very critical of task interpretation. For example, every single task has an audience it is addressed to. For example, this task that is saying record a 3-minute speech on the solution of gender-based violence. This task is open. Anyone can be the audience. It can be them talking to their parent about gender-based violence as long as they give solutions. But some tasks are very critical and very, very specific on the kind of audience. For example, a task can say, you are before the United Nations. No. Let me give an example of a funny task. You are in a bar surrounded by drunk and rowdy patrons. You are in a bar surrounded by drunk and rowdy patrons. In simple terms, okay. Surely, okay, Churchill, I've seen that. So you are in a bar surrounded by people who are drunk and rowdy patrons. Present a 3-minute speech on how they can drink responsibly and not end up in accidents. So remember, your audience are drunkards, which means that if someone is to approach this task, they cannot start by saying, protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, a good evening to you. Not drunkard that is drunk on what do they take? Chitoko, ambience. It's going to even listen to you, really. So if a speaker begins like that, they're already failing on delivery, which means that you as an adjudicator, you have been able to interpret the task based on the nature of the audience. You have been able to know what sort of delivery they should deliver. Maybe they can begin by, maybe the speaker can begin by trying to capture their attention, maybe by saying, hey, guys, can you believe what happened? Man U just won the Premier League. And trust me, even if you are drunk, for someone to tell you that Man U has won the Premier League, it is something outside, you will pay attention. Did you guys understand that, right? Okay. Now, task interpretation and audience identification. When interpreting a task, adjudicators need to assess how well the speaker identifies the intended audience and tailors their speech to suit that particular audience. So this includes considering the demographic characteristics of the audience, such as the age of the audience, the gender, the education level, and the cultural background. For example, I've seen tasks that say you are before a village committee. So which means that if someone is before a village committee, the way they present that speech is quite different. So the second last thing is to look at the relevance of the task. Adjudicators should be able to evaluate the speaker's ability to address the task in a way that is relevant. And lastly is impact. Most of these things will be covered by Bakari when he talks about how you assess a speech. Now, an example here is that for a task that requires a speech on solutions to gender-based violence, the speaker should identify the audience as individuals who are concerned about social issues and interested in finding practical solutions. So the speaker should tailor their speech to address the concerns and interests of this audience using language and examples that resonate with them. Okay, so it is exactly 8:54, and I have been able to try to take us through the introduction to public speaking adjudication. My role today here was to tell you what is public speaking, who is an adjudicator, who is a chief adjudicator, what is a chief adjudication panel, what do they do, what is their role. As an adjudicator, when you need to show up for a tournament, you need to be there early enough. How many rounds do you judge? What are the preliminary rounds? What are the out rounds? What are the silent rounds? What are the finals? Who are those adjudicators that sit on final panels? What is a speech? How do people give their speeches? That has been like my role today, and I'm just going to give an overview in form of a story. So this is how, for a beginner, public speech competition looks like. You show up on a very, very good day. You put on your very good your very, very good suit. Because it is your first time, now you want to be very smart and create a lasting impression. Maybe you don't even have a suit and you had to borrow it, but you want to look smart, and the colors are even most likely not matching and they're crashing. You have a red suit with yellow pants, but you have showed up as a good adjudicator. We don't mind, we welcome you. So when you show up on the venue, the very first thing you do as an adjudicator is to check in or to register with the chief adjudication panel to show that I am around. Now, when you check in with the chief adjudication panel, the CAP will be busy with registration of participants. What normally happens is that I myself or Wangusa or any experienced adjudicator will be able to brief you. So your CA, who is the chief adjudicator, the chief of all adjudicators in simple terms, will brief you on how the day is going to go. They will tell you that, hey, Judge Evans, today we're going to have up to 5 rounds for preliminaries, and we shall have a break straight to finals. They will brief you on the nature of tasks, and they will train you on what you want to look out for. So after briefing is done, normally because DIA or Mr. Joseph Gracious Tangiduka is very gracious, he will give you breakfast. You will not go to judge hungry, unlike other competitions. I'm just saying anyway. Okay, so after you are done having breakfast, you will go in to judge your rounds. Sometimes, depending on how the logistics happens, you may judge before breakfast is given unto you, but be rest assured, as Joseph Gracious Ainuka normally tells me, a happy judge or happy judges equals a happy tournament or a happy competition. So Debate Institute Africa will take good care of your stomach needs. What we expect from you is to be professional. After you have been briefed, you will be allocated rooms. They will tell you, Charity Rinda, go in room 1, Witness Abigaba, go in room 2. They will tell you that Eric, or they will tell you that Brian, go to room 4. You will be in this room and you will be the panelist, whereas an express adjudicator will be the chair. So when you move into that room, maybe you are 3 adjudicators, there will be a chair. The chair is the one who does a lot of talking, who tells the speakers on what they are supposed to do and who guides them. So the chair will be marking alongside you and you will be a panelist. So after round 1 is done, sometimes we give general feedback to all the speakers as a whole. But some speakers will identify adjudicators they were comfortable with. Maybe it was a panel of 2 men and 1 female, and maybe she feels she's more comfortable with the female. She will reach out to you whether or not you are a panelist or a chair. And trust me, everyone who's on this call, anyone can be reached out and to. The speaker does not even know if you're a novice judge or you're a starter. So they'll come to you and they'll tell you, hey, how are you doing? My name is this, and Judge Asimwe, I would like to have feedback. What did you think about my speech? What can I improve? And it will be very ashamed for you to even have forgotten how they perform. That is why it is important for you to flow or to write down on flow sheets. I will be working with Mr. Gracious Taiduka to produce videos on how adjudicators necessarily flow, and they will be put on the Debate Institute Africa channel. And by the way, if you have not yet subscribed, the channel for this particular YouTube, and I believe maybe this is being streamed live like yesterday, is on Debate Institute Africa. Please kindly follow and subscribe. So we shall be posting more videos there on how you flow as an adjudicator. Anyway, after you are done with that round, you will go back and meet with the chief adjudicator, and he will brief you for round 2. Then you go judge round 2, give speakers feedback. You come back, maybe you will have some lunch, some good lunch. Why? Because Debate Institute Africa loves you all and they love your stomachs. So after you are done having good lunch, then you will go judge the other rounds. Now, after a round, the chief adjudicator will brief you, and even before a round, they will brief you on what you need to do, and they will guide you. So depending on how the rounds go, the next thing that will happen is that after you have finished to judge round 1, round 2, 3, 4, 5, we shall have announcements of 2 categories. We shall have an announcement of the speakers that will go on to the out rounds, speakers that will go on to the quarterfinals, to the semifinals, and to the finals. But not only that, the chief adjudicator will also announce the adjudicators that have stood out that deserve to go judge in the out rounds. Now, let's say we began the day with 20 adjudicators. Most probably the truth is out of those 20, it's normally 7 or less than that that proceed to the out round. So you want to be good to be able to judge until the finals. Now, when you are finished to be announced, and by some good grace or lack of competence, by some good grace or luck, and you being competent, you have been selected to go and judge in the out rounds. Now, when you judge in the out rounds, you will judge from quarters. Now, for you to be able to proceed to semis, you also need to do well. So adjudicators, your fellow adjudicators will be giving feedback on you. So for you to be able to judge semis, some adjudicators break off from quarters, they don't go on to semis. Others stop on semis, they don't go on to finals. And the ones that go to finals, they will have a CV that says finalist adjudicator, Paragon Rhetorica, Central Region Tournament on their CV or curriculum vitae. And most of the times when chief adjudicators are sorting out which judges to pick for tournament, they look at their CVs or curriculum vitae, and they will be most importantly interested in those that have judged until finals. Because if another chief adjudicator has assessed that this particular individual can judge speeches of finals, then they are most likely a good candidate to pick. Go judge finals, they will announce those that have done well in finals, and they will announce the best adjudicators, and they will give you a medal or a certificate, or they will give you a piece of cake, depending on what the tournament has in store for you. But some tournaments may not be able to recognize the best adjudicators. So it is why it is normally good for you to have an isolation of the class of tournaments that you participate in. Anyway, that is just banter. Nonetheless, it's now the top of the hour, and I've been able to have a whole recap of nearly everything I've been able to cover today. So right now, we're just going to go into a very quick Q&A session. So once again, my name is Harold Sewanonda, and I've been the facilitator for this, or the instructor for this particular module, which is Introduction to Public Speaking, Adjudication. And as I will remind you, tomorrow, we may not have a general session. The schedule has already been out, but you'll have enough time to be able to do the test, and the test will not take you 2 minutes. But just as I wait for anyone that has a question, you can feel free to type in the chat space. But if you want to unmute, first wait for me to finish passing on this important communication. There are certain baseline surveys that have been shared. I'll just stop sharing my screen a little bit now, just so we can save your data. Okay, stop presenting. All right. So there are certain baseline surveys that have been shared by my good, gracious brother, gracious Tahinduka, in the WhatsApp groups. And he has done a good job to repost them in the different groups. For example, if you look at the Paragon Rhetorica groups, the starter group, you will see that he has been able to share the baseline. And the baseline is more of a pre-training survey and it's an assessment for this module 1. So if you have not yet filled in this baseline, I am not going to be able to receive your test. So it is a prerequisite that for us to be able to receive your test, you must have done the baselines. So I'm just going to be showing you a little bit of my screen, right, of what the baseline is. Okay. So if you look at my screen, it is a WhatsApp chat. Don't mind. So if you look within the chat, you realize that this is the baseline right here where you see the pointer. It is saying that, hello, adjudicator, the baseline pre-training survey assessment for module 1 is out. It will take you not more than 2 minutes to fill it in. Let me just make sure I really zoom it in, just so that everyone can be able to see it from the other side. Okay, I think by now you can be able to see it, where you see bit.ly, where I am actually trying to highlight, right? So you will see that the baseline pre-training survey assessment module 1 is out. Module 1 pre-training survey is right there. So use it to test your knowledge of what the module will be about and arouse your anticipation towards the module later on. So please fill in that survey. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen right now. Okay, please fill it in before this session actually ends. So by the end of this session, I'll be able to give time to individuals to fill in that survey. And I'm just going to share another screen of what that survey looks like, just to be sure that we are at par with everyone else, that survey had to be filled in. So if you can look at the screen once again, you will see the screen where the survey shows up. Okay, are you seeing that? It is showing pre-training evaluation for module 1. Thank you for participating in this survey. Your responses help us to evaluate your baseline knowledge and thereafter assess later whether your baseline data changed after the module or you have been able to learn something new. So it's just something simple. Please fill it in. What is your education status? Why did you choose to take up this course? Assuming a coach has escorted you, they're just different, and it's just a matter of just tapping options like I'm doing right there. It's not anything hard that you have to do. Just fill it in, show what your particular process is, read it very well, and lastly, just click on submit. We don't want to be in a situation whereby we need to fire people or to get people off the program because they could not fill in a simple survey. And this communication has been done in the different WhatsApp groups. So please be sure to fill in that baseline survey, as it helps us as a team to be able to evaluate. So as of now, just allow anyone to unmute to ask a question if you want to unmute. And if you want to put in the chat space, please do so. I will be able to gladly answer you. So I don't know if Mawerere is trying to ask a question or if I should also get you off the call for failing to unmute, like I did for Mr. Obulejo. Okay, so let me just have a look at. So Mawere, if you have a question, please kindly ask. Okay, if you know you're using Mawere, please kindly unmute. Okay, Job Blessing, please go on. Is it Kalyango, I think?
Thank you very much, Harold. So my question is basically on adjudicators giving feedback to fellow adjudicators. So I'll basically ask is it sort of authenticity of those feedbacks from fellow adjudicators? Perhaps I would even say even the participants themselves, because like you said, it's the quality of the feedbacks from fellow adjudicators or the participants on a particular judge are one of the requirements for them to break. Now, what if we are in a room, we're in a tournament, and perhaps I've been in a room with the whole tournament, the 4 preliminary rounds I've been with fellow judges, like 3 other judges or sort of. Isn't it going to be sort of like a competition whereby each judge is going to give, let me say, poor feedback on other judges simply because they also, I don't know if you're trying to get it.
Yeah, I understand you, surely. Okay, yeah, so that's an interesting question. Thank you for that, Joseph. Okay, so first and foremost, the allocation for judges is non-consistent. What do I mean by that? There is no way you're going to judge one room with the same panelists all throughout. So if at the start of round 1, this Joseph is in the room with Witness and maybe Anthony Muduku and maybe Jolie. For round 2, we shall change Joseph, put him in some other room. So which means that, first of all, they're going to have different judges give feedback on you. But at a point in time that someone is now being malicious towards you, there's so many criteria on which we actually base. And one of the things I did not tell you, but I will still tell you right now, is that, okay, someone is saying like emotional feelings when judging other adjudicators. Yes, it could happen, but you're going to have different adjudicators judge you also. So I don't think, unless the whole world really genuinely hates you and you're really rejected and you are Joseph Kony, I don't think it's going to happen. But nonetheless, even if that were the case, the other metric for evaluation is that the chief adjudicator also looks at the tab. What do I mean by this? If a certain speaker in a certain, I can give an example, there are certain speakers that have a track record of being very consistent. What do I mean by that? They have a track record of being consistent in giving bad speeches. So all throughout, they've been giving 60, 60, 62, 63, 64. And now they land in a particular room where a judge maliciously gives them 75. And that judge is you. Then I think that also gives feedback on you. And also one thing you need to understand is that even in every single room, the judges also hand in ballots separately. What that means is that before the judges even go for their own deliberation to be able to assess themselves, you as Joseph Kalyango will hand in your ballot, another one will hand in their ballot, another one also hand in their ballot. And based on those particular ballots, we can still be able to assess the mark you have given higher than anyone else's. Then the other metric we still use is that we encourage adjudicators to have a good handwriting. I normally, if I'm the chief adjudicator, ask for the flow sheets of the adjudicators. So if you're suggest of Kalyango, everyone is malicing you for some reason, they all believe you are an Adolf Hitler, I'll look at your flow sheets and see how have you been flowing throughout the whole tournament. What have you been writing? What did you write about delivery? What did you write about language? And that was your final assessment. And compare that flow sheet with other judges' flow sheet. So at the end of the day, we have a full-fledged accountability system that cannot be gotten wrong out of emotions. The other one is that speakers usually give feedback on them as well. Yes, speakers still will give feedback on you as a judge, and whether or not it is malicious, we shall still find out on the nature of how they do so. But then again, there are some real concerns. Like I've been at a tournament before whereby speakers came to me, not one or two, personally telling me that CA, there's a judge who's not judging us well, they're not timing us well, they're not even looking at us when giving speeches, and they're on their phones. I understand you, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to a point whereby the speaker is not really doing a good job and you get bored, but do not get out your phone. Please and please do not do that. Okay, Okot Elvis, over to you, good sir.
Thank you so much for the chance granted. Basically, I wanted to ask on that point of audience interpretation. I don't know whether in any case you can refer to maybe informal language, basically to fit your audience. That is when I really need to recapitulate my, like in my speech, I want to be recapitulative enough and then capture my audience. Basing on the other example you gave on about the drunkards. So I know those, like those category of individuals, they basically use those kind of informal language. So is it allowed at that very at that very time in point, or it isn't allowed? Thank you so much.
All right, surely. No problem with that. Okay, so I'll just be kind enough to sort of answer that question. But Okot Elvis, for that particular session, there'll be a particular person that will handle that session fully on informal language in speech. My role maybe was just to sort of give you a precursor to what adjudication is. But just to answer your question, yes and no. Sometimes informal language, as long as it is understandable in English and the adjudicators can understand it, is acceptable. But if a speaker, let's say from Northern Uganda, you're doing Northern Ugandan regionals, like the likes of a court, you come from Northern Uganda, gives a speech using informal language of their language, maybe in Alur or something, that cannot be understood by a typical Muganda called Wangusa Hashim Abdul Majid Otahunga. They cannot understand what that is at a point in time. So you want to be sure that they will speak in the right understandable English. But what I meant by audience identification was that you as an adjudicator, you need to have the ability to look at a task and understand that the audience of this task is going to be drunkards, and expect the particular speaker to speak to me as though they are speaking to a drunkard. Just to explain you a little bit. Okay, Aaron, what is the question? I hope I've been able to answer you, quote Elvis. Aaron, what is the question? Aaron Odonkara. Okay, I think Aaron. Okay, Aaron, please go on.
My question is, I've been seeing a number of tournaments, and when it comes to adjudication, I look at adjudicators when it comes to giving marks to the speakers. They speak among themselves as they keep awarding, and to me, I could always feel like it is not good for adjudicators to keep discussing maybe a certain thing, then they all come to agreement that they say, I think we should give this. I feel like adjudication should be, every adjudicator should evaluate a given speaker on their own, then afterwards they can give the summative of these marks added together, but when they come out of one's opinion. So I was confused, and I want to get clarification whether it is okay for adjudicators to agree upon the marks they should give a particular speaker, or every adjudicator should give their own analysis, then afterwards they can add it together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so what normally happens is that it is not professional in the middle of a speech when a speaker is actually talking to be able to start to liaise amongst themselves as adjudicators. It is not a professional thing because they'll miss out something. But when it happens, it must also happen for a good reason. For example, an adjudicator could just interrupt the other adjudicator to ask that what is the speaker's name? What did they say? But I think there's some information they can get at the end. So more will be talked about by Kanda Brand's in adjudicator ethics, but I'll still answer that. It is professional for you not to speak or to get interrupted in between the whole course of adjudication. And I wouldn't agree with adjudicators who keep on liaising in the middle of a speech. Now, adjudicators are allowed to liaise or to ask themselves more questions at the end of the speak. For example, the speaker has finished to talk and they have gone outside to call another speaker, so they can use that time to liaise and to talk. They may discuss marks. They may even say, hey man, brother, help me with your phone. My timer is not working on my phone very well. So unless something is really added, like a timer in between a speech and they need to get that particular help, it's not advised and allowed for them to do so at that point in time. Okay, let us look at Hood Kushaba. Please, Hood Kushaba, please proceed.
Hello, good evening. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. So I was asking about audience and determination of the audience to whom the speakers are delivering the speak. Who does the determination of the audience? Is it the judges themselves, or it happens even way before the speeches start? Like, who determines that the speakers are supposed to speak to this specific group of people? And therefore, when you're judging, that's one of the things that you should consider. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that good question. Just before I answer Hood Kushaba, someone asked a simple question here. Someone is saying, what if, Anthony Muduku is saying, what if I bring out my phone when it's working as the timer for the speakers? Yes, it's okay. It's fine to use a timer. Just as Churchill has said, because you're not going to have a real wall clock they're going to move with, neither will you have a real stopwatch. So you just have to use your phone as a timer. So your phone should be used as a timer. There's a difference between using your phone as a timer and using it to type out messages in between the rounds. And if it's going to be used as a timer, what you normally do is that you place it down on the table and then you start to time. Okay, just to answer Hood. All right, that's a good question, Hood. Now, who determines the audience? Is it determined prior, before, or during the speech? I'll give an example. If the task is saying that you are before the United Nations organization, give a speech on why you think Russia's invasion of Ukraine, even if for a legitimate reason, was not a good choice or a good action to take. You are before the UN, give a speech on why you think Russia's invasion of Ukraine, even if for a legitimate reason, was not a good action for them to take. Remember, Hood, the task is supposed to be interpreted on a word-per-word basis. And the first words are saying, you are before the United Nations organization, which means that the audience that the speaker is before is the United Nations organization. So if they're to give a speech, they must give a speech that tailors or fits within the needs of diplomats. That means that the nature of language they use must be that of a diplomat. They must not use informal language. So the person that determines the audience is the person who's going to mark that speech. But most of the times, every speech has a predetermined audience. It's why you are going through this training. By the time you finish this training, you'll be able to look at a task and understand the nature of audience that the speaker has to speak to. What happens in a round, ladies and gentlemen, is that when a speaker is giving their speech, you become the audience. What that means is that they need to have an eye contact with you. More of this will be discussed by the other facilitators. Mine is introduction, but that means that they are talking to you as judges, so you become their audience. So which means that as a judge, you assume that you are a UN delegate and you want them to talk to you as a UN delegate. That is when you become a much more efficient adjudicator. So if the task is saying that you are before drunkards, that means that you as a judge become the drunkard. So you assume that you are a drunkard and you ask yourself, as a drunkard, will this speech really persuade me to do what I have to do? That is why task interpretation goes hand in hand with audience engagement or audience identification. I'm just hoping I've been able to answer that question quite well. Okay, so I want to know if there are any other further questions or anything else I could provide clarity on that you think I've not done a good job doing so. It is 20 minutes past 9. Okay, Hood, please proceed. Can ask again.
Thank you very much. On still that same issue, aren't there situations where you find that a task is somehow open-ended, where the judges need to sit down and determine the audience to which the speech should be delivered to, like, you know, when they have not put the diplomat or whatever, and they just say record a 3-minute speech on this and this and that.
Okay, yeah, I understand you. I'm just going to share my screen a little bit just to explain that. I think maybe you could have missed that when I talked about that earlier on. So if you could look at my screen, you can see example task. The task is saying, record a 3-minute speech on the solutions to gender-based violence. So this task does not in and of itself specify an audience. So what this means is that the task is open and the audience is open. So that means that the speaker can give this 3-minute speech to their father, to their grandfather, to anyone else, or to a school setting. So it is open. So some tasks will be open, but some tasks will be audience specific, like the type I've given you, that you are before drunkards, record a speech on how you would advise them not to drink and drive. Okay, now I can still give you more examples still within this particular screen. Now, how do we interpret the task up there? For a task that requires a speech on solutions to gender-based violence, the speaker should identify the audience, and just forget the word should, but they can or they may identify the audience as individuals who are concerned about social issues and interested in finding practical solutions. So which means that any individual can be concerned about gender-based violence and interested in finding practical solutions. The particular task does not describe the nature of the audience. It just leaves it open. It simply says, just give us a 3-minute speech on the solution of gender-based violence. But the task is saying that you are before the United Nations organization. Such a task is specific on the audience, and the adjudicator must assume to be that particular audience. I hope I've been able to answer you well, Mr. Hood. Okay, let's look at Sewanonda Erickson. Erickson, please, you can unmute and ask.
Yes, my name is Sewanonda Erickson, and tuning in from Makerere University.
Yeah, please go on. Oh, is networking, Chikoni, not working. Guys, is it me?
My question is that
sure.
How can we ensure a balance? There are two forms of judgment. Am I heard?
Yeah, you're heard. Please proceed with your question.
All right. Yeah, I was saying, how can we ensure a balance between subjectivity and objectivity? Because I understand there are those two forms of judgment under which we can judge depending on personal judgment or opinion, and that is subjectivity. And we can also have judgment that is standardized or that is based on guidelines, and that is objectivity, in order to ensure fairness and consistency in assessment. That is the question. Thank you.
Okay, just out of charity and courtesy, I'll just answer these questions, but for the next people asking questions, I suggest we leave them within the realm of introduction to public speaking adjudication and not necessarily within adjudication itself, because another person will come here and talk about adjudication itself. Yesterday during the orientation, I was able to show you the different adjudicators and the things that they will be able to talk about. I think I'm just going to spare like 5 more minutes today to try to look into what you're going to expect in this course. But just to answer you, there is no subjective metric for judging a speech, first of all, Sewanonda Erickson. no speech we're never going to allow a subjective metric of judging a speech, for example, based on your emotions. Though subjectivity can come when it comes to delivery. For example, if a speech is saying that it is a heartfelt monologue, it's a speech from your heart. You need to feel that emotion. Yeah, that emotion can well be seen with how you tone your words. But when evaluating speeches, the philosophy or the principle is that you stick to objectivity. You objectively judge a speech. So with time, the next facilitator will be able to tell you more about that, Sarada Erickson, and I think that will be Bakari Elijah from Kenya. I think you should actually look out for him. He's a very excellent facilitator, and he will take you through judging criteria. How do you judge content? How do you judge delivery? Do you judge objectively, or do you judge subjectively? So for the sake of leaving this program consistent and on its particular merits, I will refrain from fully answering your question in great detail. I just hope you really do understand. So could we have another person that has a question? Maybe. And in the meantime, I will just want to look at the group and get to, just a moment, and get to the actual course outline, just to, because I'm seeing it's something that has kept on repeating itself, right? So I just want to look at the community group so that I can be able to look at that course outline that we dealt with yesterday, so that I'm best able to show us what we're going to cover and what questions need to fall within which particular modules. So just a little bit of a moment as I get that on board. Okay, where is this community? In the meantime, if anyone has a question, kindly raise up your hand or write within the chat space. I'll be looking right there. Yeah, and let me just figure this out. Okay. Okay, just a little bit of a moment. Sure. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen a little bit. There is a manual I'm going to be able to show that we went through yesterday that talks about the different classes and